Welcome to Transforming and Thriving
with best friends Brooke, Stacy, and Nelia.
Podcast dedicated to women sharing their inspirational stories. Hey everyone, we're so excited to share some big news. We're kicking off our very first philanthropy initiative to give back to our community. We're partnering with the Wellness and Prevention Center in South Orange County, an incredible group supporting youth and families with mental health services. They've just opened an Alcove Center in San Juan Capistrano, California, which is a safe space where young people between 12 to 25 years old can find support for their mental health, connect with peers, and get guidance with school or work. Here's how you can help. We'll be matching up to $1,000 in donations from our listeners. Every dollar goes directly to creating brighter futures for local youth. Check out the link in our show notes to donate, follow WPCOC on Instagram, and learn more at alcove.org. That's ALLCOVE.org. Together, we can make a real difference.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another inspiring episode. I'm Brooke, and I'm so happy to be joined by Katie Gerwell. Katie is a licensed professional counselor in Missouri and the owner of Healthy Roots Counseling, a mental health practice that has grown to 4 therapists. She's also the co-host of the Therapists Unplugged podcast with her colleague, Emily McCarty. Katie is an EMDR-trained therapist who specializes in supporting perinatal and postpartum women. She has been working in the mental health field for over a decade and loves to share her knowledge and experiences. We are so excited to have her on the show today. I know this is going to be a very important topic for many people, and for me personally, being in the perinatal period of my pregnancy and being also concerned about postpartum recovery, this will be very helpful for me as well. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about her experience and expertise in this area. Thank you so much for being here, Katie. How was your weekend?
Well, thank you for having me. It was really good, very restorative, I guess you could call it, because I had a lot of just downtime to relax, which is always important.
That sounds nice. Did you do anything in particular?
Actually, no, because my husband was out of town and I have 3 kids. They are more in the independent ages, which is great, like a teenager and kind of later childhood ages, which means they're more independent. So when I say I got to relax, I truly did get to relax.
Oh, that's so nice. And sometimes just not having like an agenda.
Yes.
When I say, what did you do? Doing can also be nothing.
I watched some movies because at one point all of my kids were out of my house for about an hour and a half, and I watched a Netflix movie and I ate sushi all by myself. And like you said, I'm a counselor, so I talk to people all day and then I come home to my children. So sometimes I don't get just me time, and so that was really a blessing in itself.
That sounds lovely. And I'm so glad that you had that time. So I'm really looking forward, as I said, to talking with you today and learning more. So let's just jump right in. And I wanted to ask you about a turning point that stands out to you as a major before and after in your story.
Yeah, this story kind of has different points in my life, but probably the before and after part was a lot of people, I think, it was the year 2020 to 2021, and a lot of people I feel like did start reevaluating things during that time in their life, and I was one of them. At that time, I was an elementary school counselor, and I had been doing that job for 9 years, and I was at a crossroads where this wasn't lighting my fire anymore. Burnout is definitely a real thing, especially in public education in Missouri, and I just got to a point where I was trying to figure out what my next right move would be, and so that was my final school year. So that's why said 2 years is 2020 to 2021. That was my final school year in public education, and then decided to take all my knowledge and education up until that point and explore a job more in the mental health field.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you were always having this love for the helping fields and
Yes.
serving fields. What was the kind of pull? I mean, you mentioned during COVID times, everybody was kind of evaluating and making some decisions. Was there anything like a feeling or additional things that drove you during that time?
Yes, it was. I started seeing that after 9 years and I had changed school districts and even regions of Missouri where I worked in. At the beginning of my career, it was more urban, and then the last 6 years was more of a rural area. And in both of those locations and both of those jobs, I just felt like I was not doing what I went to school for. When I was in graduate school, I was ready to save the world and help improve the emotions or mental health of children or teenagers. I basically started realizing I wasn't living my why. When I went to graduate school, I was there because when I was 16, one of my classmates died by suicide. And that was in the early 2000s when that wasn't necessarily happening. You didn't hear about it as much as you do it now, unfortunately. And
Right.
that was one of the biggest reasons why I reevaluated why I was doing my job because it wasn't helping prevent tragedies. If anything, it's only increased, at least in my area of Missouri. It seemed like those last few years of when I was in education, I would kept being called in to the high school of my school district to help support grieving teenagers who had just lost a friend to suicide. And so I started seeing, like, I'm not doing my mission, I'm not doing my why, and that was really what kinda drove me to decide this was a great career for 9 years, but now it's time to move on.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot to fuel you, but
Mhm,
incredibly brave to make that type of leap.
mhm.
Was that pretty scary for you? Were there things that kinda went through your mind during that following your why is so, so important, but it could also bring up doubt. What was kinda going through your mind during that transition?
I think the biggest thing was I was miserable and I couldn't figure out why at first. Again, going back to that why, it was that I wasn't sleeping. I was doom scrolling online because in 2020, 2021, that's what you did. You were trying to figure out like what was going on, trying to make sense of the world. I was kind of just in this funk and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I went to therapy myself as a professional who knows the ins and outs, on an educational or professional standpoint. I knew, okay, white flag, I need help. I need to figure out the next right step. And that's when I realized, like, I need to make a change. I need to go back to, and that's what my therapist asked me, why did you become a school counselor? And I said, well, because of my friend in high school. We went down that path and realized I'm nowhere close to helping prevent these tragedies from happening. Even though I was working in elementary school, like the most preventative spot, one would think, I
Mhm,
wasn't doing that because of the barriers that were put in my way of I was the state testing coordinator. I was in the lunchroom. I was doing, let's see, information gathering for, say, if we needed to make a referral for special education. I was the one that had to collect all that information. And I was pulled in all these directions. And I just kept seeing these tragedies in the school district occurring. And I was like, what are we doing here? And at first, during the 2020 school year, it seemed like and my school went back in person with a lot of restrictions. There was a lot of spacing, there was masking.
mhm.
We were back that August of 2020, which I know a lot of schools were not in the country in United States, but we were. And that was really interesting because we couldn't do a lot of what we normally did that pulled me in many different directions. So I was actually doing what I thought I went to graduate school for, which was meeting with kids who were struggling, meeting in small groups of kids, doing just things that really supported mental health of people. And even my principal's like, yeah, that's what we need right now. And I was so excited.
Yeah.
But in Missouri, that school year, by the spring, cases declined and things started feeling different. So they started lifting some of the restrictions. And I saw that, oh, we're going to just go back to the way it was.
Mm.
And I wasn't comfortable with that. I had kind of gotten a taste of what it could be like. And
Right.
then I felt like it was taken away. So that was the biggest driver of I'm leaving. It was that March of that year is when I resigned from my position. And I felt so bad doing it because at that point, they wanna know by they wanna know pretty soon, like, after the first of the year if you're coming back or not, and it was a little bit later in March when I told them that, but I said, "I gotta go figure out how to go back to what drives me," and I had a lot of support at that point. They're like, "Yeah, no, go do it what you think is best for you." I was like, "Great." So
Warm hug. I will
Yeah,
be.
I mean, yeah, I wasn't told, I wasn't like a nasty resignation. It was just
Yeah.
like, "Go, yeah, go be you. Go do what you need to do." So,
Well, and it sounds like you were wearing so many hats at one point, and your role was like no longer clearly defined, at least aligned with the things that you, like you said, went to school for and were really passionate about.
yeah, that's pretty accurate, and I think the hardest part about a school counselor in particular is it's a very subjective position. It really does depend on your district, your state, your area that you're working in, what they decide is your role. In a district right next door to the one I worked in, they didn't have to do some of the things I did, but they had other things that weren't ideal either. So it's just very interesting. And even in the beginning of my career, when I worked in the more urban area, it was actually, I felt like I was more of an administrator than a counselor. I was helping more in disciplinary activities and different things like that that didn't feel like it aligned either. So it's just very, I did see that perspective of two different districts, and still, neither one of those positions felt like I was what I was supposed to be doing for my life.
Right, right. Yeah, no, and that's such a powerful realization. You mentioned during COVID, you got a glimpse into some of the ways that might be serving that population better, and
Mhm.
you being able to function in a role that was more aligned, and then you saw it creeping back into the way things were. So, it's good on you for recognizing that and taking that leap. So, that's great. As far as, like, figuring out your why, I heard you mention a therapist and kind of helping you navigate that. Like, how did you determine then what that next step was for you?
So actually, I was only provisionally licensed at that time. I had been out of grad school for a while, and in the state of Missouri, you just have to be a certified school counselor to have your job. You don't need to be a licensed counselor. And so I didn't ever pursue it. And then I feel like there was something inside of me telling me, get the license. Like I couldn't understand why I needed this, but I was like, I feel like I should just have this in my back pocket. You
Mm,
never know what life's going to bring you. And so I was really grateful I started pursuing that, but I wasn't fully licensed yet, which can limit what your opportunities are after, say, an education job. So since I was only provisionally licensed, my next step was I worked for a community mental health agency actually doing school-based services. So I did push into schools, and I was a school-based therapist for about a little under 2 years.
mm,
And I thought, "Oh, this clearly will be the next right move because I'm working in mental health." The therapist was like, yeah, we were kind of brainstorming together, what can I do? I can get supervision under this organization with a licensed counselor, and that, I was like, "Okay, I need that for sure." And so I thought this will be it. And I really was excited to start that job. And then about a year to a year and a half in, I started seeing the write on that wall, which it was hard to be in that system because to me, it was the pressure was see more clients,
mm,
productivity, bill those hours, bill your hours, but quality didn't necessarily matter. And for me as a therapist, like I want to make sure I'm helping these children and
yeah,
teens that I'm seeing, not just trying to meet my productivity quota. So that didn't really feel good either when I was doing that job. But I got my license, and then that was when a friend of mine who had opened a private practice about a year prior to this moment said, "Do you want to try a private practice role?" And I was like, that seems even scarier than just leaving education because
yeah.
that's not just being a therapist, that's starting a business.
Right.
Fortunately for me, my husband is a CPA, so in finance, and said, "If you feel like you can help people better in this role, I can help you with the finances." So I was like, "Well, that's great to have in in your household," and
Yeah.
decided to take that next leap to opening up my own business, which I did in February of 2023 with just me, and I just started seeing kids and teens like I had always done in my career and loved it for a little bit, and then decided when I went through EMDR training, which, like you said, I'm trained in that, I started realizing that one of the best things for a child can be a very happy, healthy mother which then led me to realize my pull now is the moms. And because I saw it even in my career in education, if I was working with a kiddo and say that mom was also working on herself and kinda got some things figured out in her life, I would see the child's anxiety just start slowly calming down, and I realized, "Oh, that mom, when she's calm, that child's calm." So that kinda brought me to my specialty now with perinatal, postnatal. I'll work with any mom they don't have to have just had a baby, but the reason why the perinatal, postnatal is just how frequent postpartum mental health crises have been, particularly in the state of Missouri. So
Wow, that's so inspiring, all the stepping stones that led you to this specific focus, really and truly. Wouldn't have seen that coming
yeah.
looking at your story before, right? Like, it was very focused on school, and to be able to uncover that is pretty special. That's very cool. And would you say that you kind of arrived at that on your own just from, you said, like, working with the kids and teens in your private practice? Or was there a moment that kinda shifted that for
I
you?
think it was seeing friends and just the people I loved dearly for go through postpartum
Mm,
depression and knowing that I had a skill set with EMDR that could help heal any attachment or complex trauma that was in that person's background to then allow them to attach and bond and attune to their baby and feel really confident in their skills as a mother. There's so much out there about attachment and how important that is. But if you haven't experienced true attachment when you were a baby or a toddler or a child, it's really hard to know how to do that as a mother, let alone during a time period where hormones and lack of sleep and just other things that really just it's like a domino effect. It's actually no wonder there's women that struggle through this.
right. Yeah, no, absolutely, and I've had many, either friends or, family members that I've observed or witnessed going through this process, and obviously every individual goes through it differently, but overall there's just not enough, I guess, information. I mean, there's a ton of information out there, but not enough, I guess, guidance in this area for sure,
Sure.
the
It,
support.
it's a very It could get people fired up, but women's health in general, we're starting to have data coming out, but it's
Mhm.
been so under-researched for years. So we're starting to see links between different and even my colleague in my office, she runs her own practice, but her focus is menopause and mental health. So she sees it towards
Mhm.
the later years with women, and we bounce a lot of ideas off each other because at the end of the day, our hormones play a huge part in our mental health. So we can't, as a therapist who works with this population, like ignore that. So we actually in my office have a nurse practitioner that I regularly get my clients set up with, especially if their only doctor they've seen in the last couple of years was their OBGYN. I get them set up for some primary care services with our nurse practitioner who's in-house that can then she'll run hormone tests. She'll look a little bit further to see what can we do to help balance that out so that and some of the stuff is just natural, just okay, increase this type of food or do
Yeah.
this and managing stress because cortisol is a stress hormone that can throw things out of whack too if you have chronic stress and so it all plays a part together. So that's why our office kind of is awesome because we all work together to try to help our clients thrive, which is actually why I loved your podcast name when I first saw that. I was like, that's actually what my one of my missions is just to help women thrive in that role of motherhood.
That is so awesome. I really love that we connect on that importance and the mission of thriving, really helping people to be the best version of themselves and continue to strive for that. It's not a destination, it's really an ongoing process. So, yeah, I love that we share that value for sure. As I mentioned earlier, I'm personally interested because I'm due with my first baby in December, and so navigating this perinatal phase and trying to look for resources, there's just so much out there.
Yeah.
Also just a lot of you should be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that, and not really knowing there's the what's out there, but also what's out there that's actually effective and
Mhm.
necessary. And that's so individualized. So I love that you guys are working with additional specialists and kind of hand in hand supporting mamas out there. Are there any specific tips you would recommend for somebody at the perinatal phase and then the postnatal phase?
Yeah, no, great question. And I get that a lot actually. Like, well, what can I do to help myself through this time? And I actually have a little handout I hand to some of the new moms of just it's gonna be the one thing I always say is accept that it's gonna be a little chaotic there as you navigate and figure out your way of being a mother.
Mm,
I don't think there's a one size fits all answer for being a mother. It's what's gonna feel comfortable for you. I tell everyone to prioritize sleep, which initially with a newborn baby is almost laughable at times to say that because you're going to be like, well, when do I sleep? And I know you hear this a lot when the baby sleeps, but I can't stress that enough. If
yeah.
your baby is asleep, you got to try to sleep in any way, shape. If that baby won't be put down, maybe strap baby to you and have yourself in a recliner and just rest.
Mm,
Rest is so important, and so many moms don't let themselves get adequate rest because they feel like they have to do other things as well. But during, say, a leave of absence from work, that especially if this is your only baby, this is the time. Like just rest and recover. Whether you have a vaginal delivery or a C-section, this is all that's a major trauma on the woman's body, and rest will get you a lot further than, say, folding that load of laundry.
mm.
I always say it's recovery, and it's not laziness, it's essential, actually.
Right. I'm struggling with sleep right now at
Mhm,
this
mhm.
stage, and people are reminding me, "Oh, just rest. Your body's giving you signals to slow down." And I am getting tired during the day, and it is this pull with my brain of like, "Oh, I need to get this done." But also I can't imagine doing that right now because I can't keep my eyes open. So reminding myself even at this stage to
Yeah.
slow down and rest when I can.
And it's hard. I know women, we usually our minds are going pretty like full, especially if you're towards the end, it kind of your thoughts ramp up because it's trying to like prepare for this transition, which rationally we know there's like no preparing, but like emotionally we want to feel like we have a plan because that feels better for us. So it's just being kind to yourself. And I always say practice mindfulness, get into the habits now of deep breathing.
Mm,
I always teach every client grounding. So, turning on our five senses and ground yourself into the present moment, especially when you're like, I need to rest. Find those things that help you relax so that you can shut those thoughts off and just try to sit and rest and recover. And then what's funny about that, the very next tip is also move. You can't be resting all day necessarily, but especially when that baby is little and doesn't also want to be moving all the time, can you put baby either strapped to you or put in a car seat to go, say, take a lap around wherever you live, if that's possible? Practicing yoga or stretching within your where you live to try to just get that body movement. Because another thing that's counterproductive is just sitting all the time, especially for a go, go, go type of individual. If you go from that to like halting the brakes to no activity, then it's going to be harder for us to sleep when we're trying to go to sleep.
right, right. So I just wrote down rest, ground, move.
And then, of course, nutrition, hydration, eating regularly is essential, especially if you're breastfeeding. Hydration is essential, whether that's you're drinking water or some sort of electrolyte drink that you can just keep good hydration because you're going to get depleted very fast if you're not prioritizing nutrition and hydration. In fact, one of the greatest tips I learned when I was postpartum myself was just having like a box of Cheerios nearby because sometimes when baby's been up all night and you just have no like your brain just feels like mush, you're not even thinking about your feeding yourself. It's like, "Oh, well, there's something right here." Especially like
Right.
if you have a specific spot you're kinda hanging out with most of the time with baby, like, "Oh, I can have this trail mix or Cheerios or something that can kinda get you some nutrition while you're nursing even." Like, "Oh, I can take a little snack for myself too."
Yeah, setting up your environment to prompt you to take care of yourself,
Mhm.
make it easier, less response effort. That's great. Wonderful.
I think my last tip, and I really wanna make sure I get this in there, is
Yeah.
support system. Is just not
Mhm.
being a mother, depending on how many friends you have that are mothers or how where you're located, like, making sure you're staying connected with people, accepting help. It's so many women don't wanna accept help. They wanna be superheroes, and you're not. Like, unfortunately, I'm not a superhero. So,
Yeah.
like, accepting the help. If someone wants to come over, "Hey, I can fold laundry for you." Go right ahead. That means you can rest. They wanna hold baby and let you lay down. As long as you feel comfortable with it, go right ahead. Just accepting the help as you feel comfortable will be good for your recovery. And then again, just having those friends, people that you can set up, periodic check-ins, whether on FaceTime, whether you're calling on the phone, just having human connection is extremely important because as women, we were not meant to raise babies in little boxes. And
Mm.
whether you're in an apartment or a house, essentially you're in a box. And so we need people, whether it's family, whether it's friends, chosen family, we need our people to be there and support us during that time.
Yeah, that's so true. So, so true. And would you recommend having that set up in advance, kind of having those conversations in advance with your spouse, with your family of like what you envision that looking like and what you might need?
I think that would be really proactive, especially if you have a partner that here's how you can help me and be prepared to throw that out the window because once baby's here, it might look different too.
Good point. Hmm. Yeah, that's what I hear a lot too. It's like make the birth plan, throw out the birth plan, make
Mhm.
the postpartum plan, throw out the postpartum plan. But, in all seriousness though, it is good to have as much proactive conversations as you can.
And a lot of times women struggle in general with life transitions, and this is a major life transition. So that is a great time too to connect with a therapist. If after a few months you or whoever's listening who is resonating with this, like if you're not feeling like you're thriving necessarily in this role, that's a great time to connect with someone to get that extra layer of support before things get a little bit too out of hand for you.
What would be some of those signs that someone could look for in kind of knowing they need that extra layer of support?
So baby blues is pretty common, especially with that hormonal shift after having a baby. Hormones are going crazy and they're trying to balance themselves out. So feeling tearful, feeling overwhelmed, higher anxiety, that's fairly normal in the beginning, which is why prioritizing your basic needs is super crucial. It's actually in general for anxiety management, what I tell all people to do is prioritize those basic needs, which we just got done talking about. If you're doing that and then it's been 2, 3 months, it's still very tearful, lots of just negative thinking, maybe anger outbursts that are not like you, that's a good time to connect with maybe a professional. And like I said, I would say, 2 months, 2, 3 months of just consistent lower moods, it's
Mm.
a sign.
That's super helpful to differentiate those things. And I'm so so grateful for you breaking all of that down. I feel like I had my own therapy session. Selfishly, I'm like, "Yes, this is for me." But I know that this is going to be so helpful for our listeners and even those helping and supporting mamas.
Yeah.
I think that this will really resonate and touch a lot of people. I do want others to know where to find you. I know you had mentioned you have your podcast, you have an Instagram and a website. Would you mind sharing how people could find you?
Sure. So I do have the podcast Therapists Unplug, and we are just, it's more of a general mental health podcast. In fact, our last episode was on young adults and that whole notion that sometimes emerging young adults really can struggle to launch into the world and kind of help support those individuals. And so that was just our last episode because that's actually my colleague Emily. She loves supporting young adults in that time period of like 18 to 25. And so the podcast is Therapist Unplugged. You can find it on any, I think Apple, Spotify, Google. I think Amazon has it. Like anywhere where you listen to podcasts. We're not on YouTube because it's not a video podcast, but other than that, any major podcast platform, if you just search Therapist Unplug, it will pop up. My practice that I run is called Healthy Roots Counseling, and we have a website. It is healthy-roots-counseling.com. There on the website, there's also an area for the podcast as well that you can go check it out. But also, I'll have bios to all the therapists in the practice and just what we do. If you live in the state of Missouri, we offer in-person and telehealth, so they don't have to even be close to us because we're in like the southwest corner of Missouri. But we do see clients in St. Louis or Kansas City. As long as they're in Missouri, we can set you up with counseling services. And then the Instagram handle is healthyrootscounseling.mo. And that has all just different mental health tips and tricks. It has the episodes to the podcast on there as well, just little quick links to them. So that's probably the best way to get connected if you would like to.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we'll also include all of this information in our show notes with clickable links. So it'll be easy for people to find you. And I really just want to thank you so much for sharing your story today. And, it's really inspiring to hear your journey. And I learned so much from you today already. And I'm excited for our listeners to hear this episode as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. You said it in the beginning, one of my biggest passions is just sharing practical tips and just different supports that people can just do themselves. That actually, on my podcast, every episode, we come up with a practical mental health tip that you can do without even seeing a therapist, although we always say, go see a therapist if you need it. But we always try to share those practical tips because the reason for the podcast is my colleague and I, Emily, kept saying, I keep saying the same things over and over again. Why don't we just put it out for the masses?
Yeah.
So
I love that. It's that takeaway tips, whether I go to a conference or a workshop or listen to a podcast, something you take away, it's so meaningful. So, and you did just that in this episode. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of Transforming and Thriving. We'll be back every other Monday with more inspiring stories. Please follow us on your favorite podcast app and follow us on Instagram so you can be a part of this community and stay up to date with each episode. Feel free to leave a review so that we can get your valuable feedback and other people can find these powerful stories. We're all in this crazy life together, so let's move through it together. See you there.